Hello, this is another week of the voice chat for the Men Are Human Men's Rights Discord chat. It happens every week on here at 5 o'clock UK time. This is a time for everyone to come on and talk about men's rights issues across the world. We have many users from different regions. This week we are talking about the men's rights movement and feminism in India and how things are not perceived as fair. We're going to have some different perspectives. We have a couple members on here this week from India. I'm filling in this week for Blue. He usually gives this intro. This will be live on Facebook or posted on Facebook and recorded after we have done it. So anyone speaking knows that. We welcome people from all different viewpoints here to speak, and we've invited them multiple times. So let's hear about men's rights in India today and how young men have been affected by some of the recent political movements.
Okay, I would like to open the floor to, first off, anyone from India, if possible. Would anyone like to volunteer to speak who is from India? Okay then, so I'm going to go through a couple of issues that I am aware of in India while we wait for somebody who is from India to talk to us. But one of the major issues that's going on right now is that feminists over in India have basically legalized rape of men by women. And this is so bad that we've actually managed to find some cases of young boys being convicted or at least sent to juvenile prison for their own rape. So the young boy is raped by somebody, by a woman, and then because the law says that only men can rape only women, the boy is sent to jail as if he were the rapist. At least this is what we what it seems to be happening over there. We found a couple of examples of this happening. Another thing which you should bear in mind with India is that feminists will often say it's one of the rape capitals of the world, but what they won't tell you is that most of those cases are what are called rape on false promise of marriage, which is a devious little law which basically allows women to retroactively declare any sex they've had with a man to be rape if and when she decides to tell the police that he promised to marry her and he didn't go through with it. So suddenly all of that sex they had together was actually rape, even though she was consenting. It might have been possibly on a false premise, but that doesn't mean he should go to jail, and it certainly shouldn't be called rape. Another thing in India is that women in Delhi and a few other places possibly get free train travel, free bus travel. At least they have for quite a while. I think it's an on and off thing where they'll get free travel and then it will end and then it gets renewed. But we're aware of this happening at least a couple of times in India. Another thing that has happened is during COVID, men were completely banned from going outside for weeks at a time in certain places. And women were not banned from doing this. And in fact, they could go out and go shopping something like 1 hour a week. And this, we're not aware of what the effects of it were, but we certainly know that the law itself was pretty bad, and that any single men or gay men who didn't have access to a female member of their families who could shop for them or a female friend would have been screwed, basically, and had no food for like a month. Then we go on to marriage in basically, a woman can accuse a man of rape in order to force him to marry her in India. She basically drops the charges if the man marries her. We've seen examples of this happening to quite famous Indian men. There's a lot of stuff. I haven't even scratched the surface here. If somebody would like to pop in and tell us more, you can correct me if I've gotten anything wrong. Obviously, I'm not Indian, so it helps if somebody can come in and say what they've seen in India. So I'm opening the floor again. If anyone would like to speak, please do.
Yeah, I have a question. Um, do you think that like, okay, when you talked about like these women marrying these guys who they had previously accused of rape, do you think some of them could be like women being pressurized to marry their rapists? Or you think it's entirely because of what you said, you know, about that false promise thing?
Well, it's very hard to tell. Indian rape law is weird, and the Indian justice system is equally weird and also extremely, extremely corrupt. We had a Indian guy on a couple of weeks ago who was talking about how uh, if you're rich, they basically treat you differently in the justice system. And it can be that they're trying to get as much money out of you as possible, or it can be they give you preferential treatment. I think it really depends on what you're being charged with. But
Oh, okay.
they will, yeah, yes. So like India is extremely, extremely corrupt in its justice, especially I've heard, and it's really a crap shot if you're going to get any kind of justice whatsoever.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I just wanted to add one thing. Um, you know, also like looking at things from a gender sensitive point of view is really important. However, when it comes to the intersection of gender and in India, what we call our caste, it's very important to discuss that, right? So now India still has a caste system, although it's really dying out. It's not so heavily there anymore. It still is in some traditional communities, and a man's caste is very, very important in deciding what kind of life he'll lead, you know. So like only certain caste members, like the Brahmins, only they can be these scholars, in religious scholars, right? And so other men who are of a lower caste, like the Dalits, for example, they get treated really, really badly, right? I remember there was this video that was talking about some of the work that the Dalit men used to do, and it was quite bad because some of them would, because of the lack of jobs that were available to them, they would literally have to um, sometimes go cleaning like public toilets and that kind of thing. And not just that, actually going down into the sewers and cleaning them and that kind of thing. And that type of work is very, very unpleasant, and it's very, very dangerous. Right now, Dalit women, they can do the same thing. However, they usually don't go into the sewers to clean them because it's too dangerous for them. But like the men have to do that, right? So it's also not just a talk about gender, but also a talk of factors like your caste, right, which is also really important. And then there's also the talk of what's it called? Okay, not socioeconomic background, but okay, in India, the culture is very much that you have to be like a family who like chooses who to marry. Like it's very, very important. In India, okay, it's possible to have a love marriage, but most parents, they like to select their children's spouses, right? And this goes for both men and women, right? So, for example, if you want to get married in India, as a man, you'll have to like earn the approval of the girl's family, right? So it can be quite difficult because these days especially they really ask a lot. They ask for a person to put like a lot of money, a lot of effort into doing that. Of course, he will get some dowry out of it, which is, I mean, I think it's a positive, but he will also have to do like a lot of other things to get their like approval, as in he'll have to be like really highly educated, he'll have to have like a good job and that kind of thing. So it puts like a lot of pressure, just to have someone who will get married to you. And in Indian culture, like getting married is really, really important. So yeah.
Yeah, that's not very clear. I just realised it's transparent, but yeah, it goes. The caste system goes. Hold on, I can't read it. Sorry, and let me just check the other one. Okay, the caste system goes Brahmin, uh, Keshyata or something, Vaishita, Sundra, and then right to the bottom is the untouchables, the outcasts. The untouchables are called that because you literally aren't, you're not supposed to touch them. They're considered unclean in like a ritualistic sense. Japan had a similar system, and in fact still does in some senses, from what I've heard. It's basically what happens when everyone is the same race for hundreds and hundreds of miles. They tend to come up with a caste system instead of discriminating in other ways. But yeah, it's the Brahmin aren't just the academics and the priests; they're also like the local leaders. They're basically every cushy job, and then each class beneath them is um, they're under, they're like the people who are under them in the pecking order, and it basically, who they interact with is probably mostly just going to be the class directly beneath them. But obviously, when it comes to the dirtiest and filthiest work, men are going to be the ones doing rather than women.
So I was just wondering real quick, obviously law and societal rules are different, but I thought that the caste system was illegal now. But is it basically it's illegal, but everyone still refers to it and goes by it?
It's illegal, but obviously people are still going to follow it anyway, which is bad. But there's some people who still follow it.
And
Actually, a big number of people still follow it.
It's it's basically like trying to make racism illegal. You can make it illegal all you want, but you still got to filter it out of the society level by level by level. The people at the top won't want to give it up. Even the people who are at the bottom will struggle to give it up because the people right at the bottom will struggle with the mentality of it, and the people just above them will not want to give up that power. Honestly, this is kind of
yeah, I understand that. I mean, a lot of things go that way, but I was just wondering how prevalent, from someone from India, how prevalent that mentality still is. Is it very prevalent? It hasn't really changed much other than in law on paper?
To be honest, it probably really depends on where you go. I think you'd have to ask one of the Indian people here, because if I start talking about the caste system, I'm probably going to make a large mistake. My perspective is saying what I probably would have said, which is that it's mostly in the outlying areas. Let's say it's still completely prevalent, and then the closer you get to like the modern urban areas, the more it's going to be a non-issue.
Is there any way that it's more of an issue to men than women? Is there more social mobility in women in India than in men?
I would say one thing. I'd say one thing. It might be more important to our family to have the guy be of a higher caste, but so in that way, like, you know, a woman could get married to a guy who was an upper caste person, but usually it's pretty difficult for people of both genders to get married to like an upper class person. Usually, most parents want only like one one particular caste or higher, like their particular caste or higher. But however, I would say one thing because like of a shortage of like women in India, parents tend to, especially these days, be more lax with you know the requirements for girls in India, but they're really strict for their requirements for boys, right? So that also leads to a case where like you know men are in India are even sharing a wife because like they can't find anyone else to get married to them, you know. So it's that kind of thing.
One thing I did want to bring up was Indian. Well, there's been a number of cases we've seen of Indian wife worship, which is basically where they take the wife and, like a public ceremony, they decorate her up and then they bow down to her and kiss her feet and stuff like that. And it's all very kind of cringy and uh, it's hard to tell how common that is, but we've seen quite a bit of evidence of it. We've seen photo shoots where the man is like lying down on the ground while the woman is basically standing on him and stuff like that. It's yeah, it's India is very very gynocentric. We've covered it before that Indian men can't even articulate that there is any kind of problem with you know how society is in a lot of cases. If you point it out to them, they'll just say, well, that's how it has to be, stuff like that. It's Catboy, what do you mean is not a thing? I didn't say it was a widespread thing. I was saying that we've come across numerous examples of it. I can track some down and post them for you if you guys want to try and carry the chat for a little bit. Catboy, are you Indian? If you wanted to talk, you could come and talk and tell us all about it. Okay, then. Would anyone else like to talk? All right, then. Unfortunately, it seems like our regular Indians have not turned up, so maybe they'll come along in a minute. Kathleen, did you have something to say?
Any more about education in India? I remember one of the users a while ago. He had the harpy eagle as his avatar. He was talking about how they had set up these centers for female education and like women that had a lot nicer dorms and stuff to study. I was wondering if anybody could talk about that and the difference in education and the ease of obtaining education between the genders.
I will say one thing. So in terms of education in India, in the past it was kind of difficult to be educated, you know, whether you're male or female, right? Because you know, Kenya is a very, very large country with over 1 billion people, and a lot of people, like absolutely millions of them, live in abject poverty, which is a problem. However, these days, it's improved, which is good, in terms of getting people to access education. One second, let me just check up on statistics as I explain, right? However, if we're looking specifically at the case of male and female education in India, what we're going to see is that like it wasn't how it was in the past, where there was a massive difference between male and female education in India, right? So what we have nowadays is that they are really pushing for women to be educated, which is really really good. And okay, whenever I usually talk about things like literacy rates, I usually look at the ages between like 18 and 24, around there. And the reason why I do that is because, like, let's say for example you are someone who was living in the 1960s and you never got educated and you're still alive today. It means it's going to like bring the average down, right? So I usually look at between 15 and 24, which is also what the World Bank looks at, right? So I'm just going to open up the statistics and as I continue explaining. So in terms of education, both male and female people are able to get educated. Both of them are able to go to university. And if you look at the ratio of male and female university students, you'll actually find that women are slightly higher to obtain a university degree than men are, right? Which is good because in terms of there's been a really really high push um, to be for women to be educated, right? So okay, I've just looked at the World Bank, and then they said literacy rate, youth ages 15 to 24, gender parity index is 0.97, right? So what that means is that in terms of boys and girls, they almost have the same literacy rate, although girls are slightly, like very slightly lower, right? So that is the literacy rate between both of them, right? And rather, in terms of gender, right? And for the literacy rate of the youth is 92%, right? So it's really improved these days, is basically what I'm saying. But one thing that I will tell you, school tends to be harder for boys, because okay, even though they might not have any issue accessing the school, like actually going to the school, especially these days, it's because when you're punished in school as a girl, it's usually like light. But for boys, like there's some special punishments that can only be given to boys, right? So like, I think I've mentioned this before. One of those stress positions called the chicken can only be given to boys, right? So that makes it more difficult to like actually like go to school, right? And okay, I don't have statistics on this, but I've heard anecdotal evidence from people who go to school in India that like the teachers, they tend to be quite tough, on students because of their gender, right? So it makes it difficult for some people because they'll feel like they're being, singled out, right? And then there's also the fact that in India, most of the child laborers are boys, which can deal with like stopping some boys from being educated and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've heard from Zeta that he's at college, I think, and he's talked about how the dorms for the girls are the best of the best in the college, and the dorms for the guys are basically illegal accommodation where it's in the most sketchy parts of town. It's the most awful places, and it's just completely scummy, the accommodation they've got to put up with. It's it's pretty bad apparently. So if you're not rich, you've got to put up with it if you're male in that college. I don't know how that stacks up with other colleges, though. My perspective wants to talk about honor killings, which are something which do happen to both men and women. That is correct, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that people don't usually talk about too much. So in India, there's do you guys know this thing called acid attacks?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in India there's a special law and some special what's it called? Like compensation, monetary compensation from I think the government or some other I think it's the government. Yeah. If you're a woman and very unfortunately you're a victim of 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 that attack, you'll get that compensation, right? Which is good, right? However, if you're a guy and you're a victim of that acid attack, you won't be given any sort of compensation. I think it's because maybe they assume that usually the main targets of acid attacks are female, and women are the slight majority in the victims of the acid attacks. But in India, it's about 40% male victims, 60% female victims, right? And acid attacks can happen for any number of reasons, not just rejecting a marriage, right? It can also be due to a deal gone wrong and that kind of thing. So it does happen to men, but it they get no they get no financial benefit. Oh, not financial
Yeah,
benefit,
it's
financial compensation.
yeah, it's we don't actually know what the percentages are of men and women who get acid attacked in India. But we have seen that it's mostly men in, I think, London
Yeah,
and possibly the
80%.
whole of the UK.
80%, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it would be very hard to extrapolate that to a completely different culture and country.
No, no, no.
But
I mean, like in terms of India specifically. I can share you the article that shows the number of male and female victims, and it's 40% male victims in India specifically.
40% male victims.
Yeah, 40% male victims. I can even share with you if you want. I'll have to look for it though. But basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that they're about like 40% of the victims, and legally they cannot receive like um, the compensation that's there for women to get some reconstructive surgery, right? Because obviously, if you have an acid attack, it does very big harm to your body. Um, so it's that compensation is given to those women so that they can get the surgery, so that they can you know um you know like fix that problem that they have, right? But if you're a guy, you're gonna have to like pay for it yourself, and if you have lack of money, you're just left like that, which is quite sad.
Yeah, that's kind of disgusting, to be honest. It makes me wonder about those stats, if the men's stats aren't actually higher, but they're being ignored. If they're being ignored in the financial compensation, then they're likely being ignored in other places as well.
Yeah, it's usually the case of who reports and who doesn't, because these statistics might be as with domestic violence and other things. It also depends on the reporting. So it there's a possibility that not all of them are reporting and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is very hard to say what, like as we said earlier, the justice system in India is very, very corrupt and it's not very good generally. And yeah, uh, would anyone like to bring up any more things that they heard about, like stuff that's going on in India? Oh, is that Katie? Is your mic just on? Are you trying to talk?
No, sorry.
All right, sorry. It sounded like you were. Anyway, anyone want to bring up anything else that about India? Has anyone got any first-hand experience of this? That would be very valuable. It would be uh, eternally embarrassing if we got through this entire episode without any actual Indian people uh, showing up to talk about their issues. Considering we invited quite a few. My perspective, aren't you Indian? Okay. Right. So everyone's being very quiet. So I'm going to uh, ask if anyone has any other news or topics they would like to talk about in the meantime.
I have something that's kind of a little bit off topic, but it's about men's rights. There's been a lot of stuff in the media recently about missing person cases and homicides being covered in an unfair way when the victims looks a certain way. For example, like black female victims versus blonde female victims, like with this Gabby Petito case. I was wondering if we could talk any about homicides against men or men's missing person cases and how much they're covered less than female cases in general, since it's such a hot topic right now talking about you can't hear me?
I can give you. No, I'm saying I'm going to give you like a numerical number. Okay, numerical number. Okay, that's redundant. But there was a study. I can link it for you if you'd like. A study which showed that per the gender of the victim, male cases were 3 times less reported on. And most of the focus was on the women who get kidnapped, right? And I'll give you an example, right? So we have this whole thing called the missing white woman syndrome. And many people I've noticed, especially on the internet very lately, get really upset at the white part, but ignore the woman part. I remember some time ago there was a group of indigenous people who were being either kidnapped or murdered, and there was one particularly egregious report, right, or article saying indigenous women are going missing, which was true, but if you actually look at the numbers, it was more men than women who were being murdered or going missing, right? And so it's like these days, especially, they try to paint racism as something that's either equal between men and women or just mostly affecting women. We have this whole intersectional thing that if you're a woman, you're really super duper oppressed, but if you're a non-white woman, then you're extra super duper oppressed and that kind of thing. So they try to bring up these narratives, which are actually proven, wrong, because okay, they tend to only talk about like when it affects women and tends to ignore when it affects men, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I do have. Perspective wants to talk about child labour. Anything to say about that?
I think he wants you to talk about it.
I just wanted to try and provoke somebody else to talk on the stream rather than just me. Well, mostly me anyway. I've been talking a lot on here. Does anyone else want to talk about these issues?
Yeah, I can go.
Go on then.
All right. on the topic of how male homicides are covered just in general. I guess common wisdom is that, because men are the default, our suffering and our death is not news. And I have a hard time even arguing with that, that this is how our issues are approached, that that as long as things stay the way they are, the lives of men and boys are cheap. They say our reproduction is cheap, everything about us is cheap, easily available. Nothing to get excited about. That our lives, our efforts, our connections to our families are always contingent, meaning that, it depends on what we do, what we contribute. I mean, these are, old, pretty old tropes, but in any discussion about it, what I find is that once people become aware of it and they become aware of how pervasive it is, there's a period of time where all you can do is talk about how shocking and offensive and immoral it seems. And that's true. It's shocking, it's offensive, and it's immoral. And, we're kind of reaching a point in all of our cultures where, that ignorance has painted us into a corner, where it's hard to move and it's hard to do anything but complain about the status quo. But at some point, the shock has to wear off and the anger has to go away, or at least become focused, and something has to be done. But if you like write a letter to somebody, some media company like a TV station or whatever, it'll go right in the garbage. They will not move on that. Most of the mainstream media will not adjust their view of it. And most of the policy making appendages won't do it either, because as it is right now, there's no percentage in it. They won't get anything out of it. The mainstream media won't advance their personal ends by focusing on men's suffering the way things are right now. Public policy, the government, educational institutions, same problem. As long as our value is that contingent and our humanity is so hard to see, then, I expect if we all are back here again in 100 years, we'll be talking about the same thing. But if enough of us decide to stop being angry and start being active, then then the incentive to pay attention to us will start to show up. That's not an easy thing. It can be done, but it's not easy.
Yeah, it's certainly not easy, but we do have to push as hard as we can now. The leaflet campaign is actually part of us doing that push. Thus far, we've only mentioned feminism once in it, and so we're trying to keep the anger at them fighting against our rights fairly low, and instead try to push people to ask questions about why reality in our country, in our civilization, is the way it is. Like, why are governments making lopsided laws? Why are why are people pushing for those lopsided laws, naming no names? We can, we do talk about them being, our opponents where we can, but we don't want to just drag people into the into a movement which is focused on anti-feminism, even though that is a major part of what we have to fight with. It's just we have to make sure the movement endures beyond that, so that if hatred is defeated, we don't fall into apathy and think that our problems have all been solved.
That's a pretty big component of this. The cost of being effective is, you're right, just being angry is, unaffordable. It makes a person feel good for a minute sometimes, some people, but it's not effective. It doesn't move the needle. And as you say, Ma, this will be a matter of being sustainable. Whatever it is we do, we better figure out a way to keep doing it. It's got to be something that we can keep up longer than a couple of years. And anger is one of those emotions and one of those motivators that it doesn't really last. When things start to clear up and progress is made, hard to stay angry, but it's not that hard to stay determined, if that's what you decide to do. It's not that hard, with like the leaflet campaign. That's going to be a one-shot deal, but what we do with that, with whatever feedback we get, is probably going to have repercussions for a while. And we have to be ready to receive any criticism, any comments, any support, like I said, with determination, but without anger, and with a clear message that we're welcoming the support of anybody that decides to support us, and that we are not going to we're not going to train our focus on our detractors, especially because we have so many, and especially because we have so many different kinds of detractors. Earlier in the chat, somebody was discussing traditional conservatives. And to be really honest with you, because I'm not a traditional conservative and I've lived among them for a very long time, it's easy for me to, raise my arms and say, yeah, it's all the TradCon's fault. But with them, it's more a matter of disregard than active hostility. A traditional conservative takes a look at, all the men's issues that we talk about and kind of shrugs and says, yeah, that sucks, and then they go on with their day. Sometimes that's harder to deal with than somebody that's, actively hollering and screaming in your face. Somebody, who just simply ignores you, is a little harder to convince, I guess, or at least to keep the focus of. The best thing about the most rabid, misandrous people out there is they keep paying attention to us for some reason, and they keep doing it publicly, and they keep making themselves look bad, which is fine by me. I think they should continue doing that, because, maybe one day, a long time from now, the more indifferent ones will look up from whatever it is they're doing and say, well, maybe these MRAs and maybe these supporters of men's issues have a point. But like I said, that's kind of a long walk. That's not something that's going to get fixed by Thursday.
I agree about a lot of that. What I don't agree about is the idea that the leaflet campaign is a one-shot thing, because we actually consider this year just a trial run. We're going to be coming back every year with this leaflet campaign. We'll have more leaflets. We'll have redesigned leaflets. We'll be putting different pictures on them. We'll be changing the fonts and text so they're always fresh. And
Oh,
we'll
yes.
make sure that we keep handing them out.
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't mean that, it's a one-shot deal that won't ever be repeated. My hope is that each of them will be recognizable events, and that they won't just sort of fall into I don't know how you would say it exactly, but just sort of a part of the wallpaper, that every time we do it, and I hope we do it fairly frequently, but every time we do it, that it gets noticed just because it's a thing, just because it's, not part of the everyday. That's what I meant. But you're right. It's not going to be a one and done, you know. But hopefully it will seem extraordinary enough that it always gets, a few eyes on it.
Yeah, it's we do really need to keep ramping it up, ramping it up. The idea of this leaflet campaign is to convince other people to take it up next year. So if you can share, everyone can share the link for the leaflet pack, that would be very, very good. It would help us to get more of these leaflets out there and show people what's going on. And anyone who wants to help with the leaflet pack, please just send me whatever slogan you think should be on the leaflet, and I will put it on there. I'm also considering doing alternate backs for the leaflets so that they all have different stats on them. The main page, this does make the main page a little bit difficult to update because it makes it increasingly large and unwieldy. But we actually want to just keep the main International Men's Day page as light and focused as possible.
I had thought, because Tim and I were actually talking a little bit, because he's going to be joining me on International Men's Day to pass out the leaflets. But after our discussion, I was thinking that it would be great if, as you say, this is a sort of a staging event for future events. And I thought, at least regionally or locally, that there be, like I intend to do it more often than only on International Men's Day. But mostly because, in addition to doing the event and passing out the leaflets and having quick discussions with people that interact with us, that my hope is, it'll generate enough interest that people become involved or at least get curious. If they do, I want to have kind of a ready, not canned, but easy to, easy to organize discussion with anybody that wants to talk about it, whether they're completely confused or just sort of emotionally charged about it one way or the other, so that I can explain, there's more to what we're trying to do than just raising awareness. That, if somebody does become interested enough to get involved, that, it's like anything else. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And the right way is, as I say, to kind of go through the red pill rage and being feeling affronted and shocked, to work through that and then get serious and decide if it's something that you want to to commit to, because once you do that, then people like us here in this space, will start to rely on them, and we want to be able to keep them around. Say whatever it is that we do, it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be something people can do.
I think the most important thing to add to what about Taz said, is that not only do we need to make people aware of these issues, but we need to have our own theory. By theory, I mean philosophical theory, right? See, feminist theory is very well known and very wide, and it's very devious in that it makes excuses for everything. Even no matter how nonsensical it is, they will always have an answer for everything, right? So, for example, if you were to maybe if Ma puts out a leaflet and says something like, men get 63 to 66% longer sentences for the same crimes. A feminist will just look at that and be like, well, it's because women are viewed as as weak and dastardly, I guess. So we get like less sentencing for the same crime, and that's the fault of the patriarchy, and it's actually just men's fault, that kind of thing. So because of that, we need to make our own theories, and we need to argue against such things, because feminist theory has really been indoctrinated into people's heads, So we need to come up with, a deeper philosophical theory as to why different genders are treated like this. And it's not like it hasn't been done, because there are sociologists who have said, actually, sexism increases violence against men and reduces violence against women and that kind of thing, So I feel like that's important.
Yeah, you're right. The I guess, for lack of a better term, patriarchal theorizing about it is, it goes so far and no farther. And it seems to satisfy most uninformed people that, oh well, shorter sentencing for women is just patriarchy, and it's because men are men. And I'm like, no, it's because too many men are frankly gynocentric. I mean, if we're going to say this is a patriarchal uh, warped frame for the legal system, fair enough. But why would so many men be that interested in making sure that the legal system takes it a lot easier on women just because they're women? And it's obvious. It's because they're they are biased to that out group, and they don't attend to it. They don't pay attention to it. They don't recognize it, and so they fall for it.
There is actually there's a show on Netflix. It's called Girls Incarcerated. And it follows an Indiana prison system. And they just redid their underage female detainment system. It was 160 beds in separate cells, and they just reduced it to 40. And in the first episode, they talk about how they've moved away from putting underage girls in a prison environment, and they're putting them in more rehabilitative environments. And they talk all about how they've completely reworked the system to have them in these like open, like dormitory style rooms with lots of counseling instead of actually being like locked up. So the 40 girls in the program, they're all like murderers, armed robbers. They're saying that they're only keeping the worst offenders locked up now. They've, reduced it to a quarter of the previous, actually less than a quarter of the previous capacity. And it's really interesting. But it's the second season of Girls Incarcerated. They talk all about how girls are basically easier to be rehabilitated than young men in their interpretation of the issue.
I believe that. It is easier, I believe, in the current situation to rehabilitate young women as opposed to young men, again, for the same reasons that rehabilitation of a young woman is it's a lot looser and a lot more broad than rehabilitating a young man. Rehabilitating a young man is basically comes down to breaking him entirely and making him conformist and docile. Okay? With women, if you can get them to, not blow up the building or whatever, if you can get them to just like basically get through the day without causing a panic, they're rehabilitated. I mean, that's it. They just don't have to do as much.
Would you get
I just think it's
yes
interesting that they
in a fairly
I'm sorry, Ma.
just having trouble.
Oh, there you are.
Ma, you're cutting out a bit.
Well, I think we might have lost Ma for a moment. But Kathleen, what you were talking about, I don't have Netflix. I don't really indulge in any mainstream media. But long story short, like I said, rehabilitating women is kind of the path of least resistance. As long as they
So, do you think that
as long as they can be. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
do you think that it's easier to rehabilitate a woman, or do you think that less rehabilitation is required by society to reaccept a woman, to see them as less of a threat?
The latter.
The latter, yeah. Not so much by what you get them to do. It's just a matter of cutting away the behaviors that are just entirely intolerable. As long as you can do that, then the job is done. But time after time, whether it's mentoring programs or mental health treatment facilities or the various types of incarceration, whatever the case may be. In the beginning, with a young man especially, there's a great emphasis on curtailing whatever behavior got him there in the first place. After which, there's usually a pretty comprehensive program to get them to start doing something else, that everybody loves them for. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to teach young men how to do good things, I suppose. But to turn around then and say, how does that play out in the lives of or in the treatment and rehabilitation of women? What becomes this new expectation for them, that they didn't have going into it? And usually it's like I say, well, they stopped behaving badly. So mission accomplished, and that's not really it's not really enough, it's not. And in terms of believing in equality, that really cheats them, right? That really shortchanges them. If I've been through one kind of rehabilitation or another, a few different kinds, and although they kind of failed, the fact was that I did feel like they wanted me to do something different than what I had been doing, but just stopping the behavior I was demonstrating was not enough, and they were right. It wasn't enough. My presence here today is this new set of part of this new set of behaviors, that apparently everybody likes the way I behave now, the stuff I do, but for some, if, as a young woman or a girl or even an older woman, I don't know, that has found herself, in the hands of the legal system, or in, treatment, for example, for addiction or for anger management, whatever the case may be. Like I said, the second half of that rehabilitation appears to be missing. It has to be more than just be a good girl. That's, to say that that's enough is crazy. What does she build this new, this new day-to-day life on? And it's not like I've never heard that complaint from women who have also been through rehabilitation. It's like, okay, they're finished with me now. Now what? What am I supposed to do? And like I said, it's evasive, which is a kind of shame.
It's very interesting that they like to say that men are punished more because of patriarchy, when actually what's going on, I don't know if anyone mentioned it, but the feminists are actually, well, I like to say they are the patriarchy, because it's the feminists who are demanding that prison sentences for women be lowered. They're the reason we have all these prison reforms where female murderers are sent to a happy, fun community camp, while male murderers are sent to be treated like the scum of the earth. So it's basically it's basically just that they are trying to stop women going to prison at all in England, in India, and all these different places, and set up these, women wouldn't possibly do anything bad, like ideologies in the justice system, and keep them and perpetuate them. I mean, they obviously existed before because we've had them for a long, long time, but they're trying to set up, enforce these ideologies where people just assume that if a woman does something evil, it's because society or a man forced her to do it, and they are basically just perpetuating that. The traditional system had that. Now they're latching onto it and they are doubling down on it. So it's this mixture of old conservative and neoliberal, who are just coming together in this huge toxic stew of gynocentrism that is really ruining the world for men. And it's not like the systems that men go into where they get rehabilitated and they're not treated like scum, and they work an awful lot better than prisons. But we only try these sorts of systems on women, and the standards are so much lower, as Taz was trying to say earlier, that it just like women get a little, they get a little circle of people where they cry and they say, "Oh, I was made to," and blah blah blah, and then they get patted on the back, and out they go into society again.
Yeah.
That's usually because of the threat narrative of patriarchy theory, is that if they basically believe that every time that male violence is just based on, or it's just him being oppressive, while female violence is just based on it's just retaliative. If they just repackage every single female violence as retaliative violence, and like, if you're a woman who's being violent, then it means that she must have been doing it as a reaction to like another person being, and therefore she's not like the instigator in actuality, right? Even though she very well often is and could be. And the reason why they do that is just because of the patriarchy theory, and they are like saying, it's not her, she's just reacting, because like we tend to be more okay with people for good reason when people are self-defense violence rather than when they are initiating violence. And the excuse for female initiated violence is just that they are repackaging it as retaliation because of threat analysis. And that's basically why in many societies it is considered to be more acceptable.
Yeah, Michael Flood has this statistic sheet he likes to share around. I think we've had it on here before, where it's basically all of the female domestic violence is self-defense. All of the male domestic violence is, because they're evil. And 0% of the male domestic violence is for self-defense. And it's just such an obviously cooked statistic that it's amazing that anyone can look at it and think, this is real, when it just is so obviously patently fake. If you know anything about human nature, it's just like even one man defending himself.
And I would actually mention that people who generally believe in that threat narrative, what they basically believe in is a theory that is basically they're following a framework that it's like Nazism but worse. And I will back that, but that's not probably the point of the discussion. But I just wanted to say that that's definitely what they're doing. No doubt, absolutely. So they can't judge Nazis. To me, they're basically all the same.
I personally believe that the belief like that is basically same as a misogynistic narrative or having misogynistic views in particular. I don't see any kind of difference between them. They are equally worse, to be honest. And does anyone want to ask me any question or talk about any certain topic regarding India? Because I've been getting a lot of messages for it.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Seda. It's great to see you. And if anyone knows any other of our Indian regulars, it would be great if you could bombard them and try and get them on the chat. But obviously, don't be rude or anything. Seda, could you maybe give us a general overview of what it's like for men in India, maybe?
So basically, the laws are quite draconic or kind of old-fashioned, to be honest. First, when I actually researched the laws, I thought, except quite few of them are quite fair, since like child custody law, divorce law, and alimony law seem to be quite fair to me as compared to Western countries, to be honest. But I was proven wrong when I saw the Men's Day Out, where the courts completely ignore the laws or judgment, and and are in favor of women regardless of any kind of law. And like they would like harass men or just give out some kind of a nonsense judgment just to side with women. I have seen that happen a lot, and I wasn't really aware that a woman could make so many false allegation of so many different things in a divorce proceeding or any kind of proceeding, and prolong the case. Even if all of them are proven false, she will still get benefit for prolonging the case for so long.
I have a
So like
question.
that's kind of like a loophole. That's kind of like a loophole that women can easily exploit. And like this loophole is even exploited by people who use women to harm a man and his family.
I have
Yes.
a question I want to ask about India particular, right? Because I do know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do are under the perception that there are laws in India that are discriminating against men, right? And therefore my question is this, right? Because in many countries there are only laws against discriminates against men, or rights that only women have and men don't have, right? And women are the only one with all the legal rights. That's very common in the world, unfortunately. I want all people to have the rights, by the way. So I wonder, in India, right, are there any laws that women do not? Are there any laws that in any way discriminate negatively on against women as well, or are the only laws that discriminates negatively against men? Because I want to know if India is a female supremacist state or
I
not.
really don't. I don't. I don't really think there is even a single law that discriminate against women. Like there was a law, not a law, but some particular military department didn't admit women just until recently, but that's it. I haven't really heard from any other kind of law that discriminate against women, or any kind of law that is specifically for male only. Opposites happen. Like there are laws that only protect women, like stalking law. A man can be charged with stalking, but a woman can't.
And
Sexual
dowry,
harassment, dowry
dowry law.
harassment, domestic violence, and stuff like that. And like also the particular military department where the women weren't allowed before, it was kind of like a secretive department, so that would kind of make sense that women weren't admitted into it for a long. Other than that, I can possibly think of anything like that.
I have a
Oh,
question for Zeta. Well, actually, two. Um, so my first one would be about the phenomenon of groom kidnapping in certain parts of India. I think it was Bihar, if I'm not wrong. Where grooms would be kidnapped and forced to marry these women that they don't really know. And then there's also okay, in your opinion, I've just heard like this stereotype that like Indian families they don't really value girls and that kind of thing. And like, is have you seen or heard anything about that? And yeah,
The first one, I will get on it. Like I have seen it happen a lot. Basically, in my parents' state, Rajasthan, it also happens quite a lot. Basically, it's like a forced marriage. It should be legal, and if the couple want, they can like go to court and say like the marriage was forced. So it shouldn't be considered. But many times, in situation in forced marriages, the court tries to not get them divorced or prolong the proceedings so that they don't get divorced, or it just take up too many resources for someone to actually go through it. So the courts are really helpful towards it, especially when it happens to men. And for the second answer, I think it does kind of happen because in India, like the kids are basically parents retirement, and girls usually do not take care of their parents. I have my few of my father's uncle. In one case, one of my father's uncle recently passed away. He had like six daughters and one boy. Like the youngest is a girl that is 13-year old, and the single boy that's kind of like 14, 14ish, I think, 14 or 15. And other four daughters are like adults, and my father's uncle even got all of them educated, even got them all of them married, and which is a big deal since when it's a daughter's marriage, father really spends a lot, and he kind of got food his of his daughter married. So when he died, he didn't left very much of kind of money. So the responsibility of taking care of the my father's uncle's wife fall on like a 14-year-old kid. So four daughters really didn't do much, and also accept him that it would fall on like male relatives like my father or my father's other uncles, and also had another uncle. My father also had another uncle that died when his daughter was 3 years old. So she also got educated, but also got married, but she didn't look after her mother. So very rarely like the daughters take responsibility. I think because I think there's a lot of pressure on male. Even if a guy is not very educated, he will do any kind of work, just get passed by or earn money to take out of his parents because that's his responsibility. If he doesn't do it, the society is gonna point finger at him. But still, there are terrible sons and there are daughters that take care of their parents elderly. That I think society also plays a huge role on it. Um, and many women are discouraged at taking care of their parents or relatives, etc. And because of them, there is a certain favoritism among like a poor household or like a kind of like conservative household where like they focus on like their son more since like he's kind of retirement plan, to be honest. uh I think like taking care of son in that kind of situation is kind of like laughable, because you never know what's going to happen in the future, or whether the son will turn out to be true to them or the daughter. And and like there are like a certain communities that favor women, or like there are certain festivals, or like there are certain rituals, or there are certain social practices like that favor women most. Like since in my family, like whenever there's a function or you go somewhere, you actually take a sari that's like woman's clothing with them and like just give out it to every woman in the family. So like I think, and there isn't a really an equivalent of men, because men are the ones that are buying the dresses and women are the ones that are getting it. So, and also there are lots of communities where women are favored a bit more. So I cannot say for whole India, like the both elements and all kinds of element exist everywhere.
That's very interesting, Zada. Do you have anything else you'd like to share about India? We were talking earlier about rape on false promise of marriage. We were talking about how feminists will say that India is a rape capital because of that. We also mentioned that little boy who locked up for his own rape.
So the first one, where like the rape on the promise of marriage, basically if you have sex on, and like after that you refuse to marry someone and the girl said no, that she only had sex because you promised to marry her, which like law has been continuously denied by the Supreme Court. Let's say that it doesn't exist and other law courts shouldn't do it, but since there are many regional courts and many of the courts proceeding are very conservative and all like that, stuff like that. So most of the time like courts take women's side and like harasses men into marrying him. So I would like to add, like I would like to give it to the feminists that they don't agree with this practice, because it's ended up harming women, because perpetuate the narrative that a woman should marry her rapist in real life. So the feminists are like
Dad, are you there?
Zada, are you still there? It all went very quiet there for a second. What's happened? Zada?
Not really sure. He was talking and then he cut off, so maybe connection issue.
You've gone very quiet as well. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Oh, Christ.
Well, anyway, just to fill that dead air, to continue on with the forced marriage thing, as far as I've seen, the statistics say that half of all rape cases in India are this on false promise of marriage thing. And I don't really see personally the feminists actually trying to fight against it. As far as I've seen, it's just been left. But then again, that's pretty standard for other countries. If it didn't happen in the West, generally speaking, feminists don't say anything about it. That's not just on them. That's pretty standard for everyone. With every issue, people just don't tend to care if it's more than 1,000 miles away, or if it happened in another culture. But yeah, it is pretty bad. We've seen some cases where men have gone to jail because of it. I don't know if that's normal. Oh, hello?
I think there
Who's
was
that?
some kind of network issue, but I could hear you guys, and like my wasn't getting through. It was a like network issue, so I
Okay,
would like to get back on it. So the
carry on, Zeta.
feminists actually are with us on like the law of rape on the promise of marriage kind of law. So the feminists are actually with us on this because like actually harm the real rape victims and make the light of rape cases. But there are lots of women I have seen that actually support this law, since like it kind of give them power and they think like it's kind of fair to men and stuff like that. And so basically there are many conservative women and even progressive women or many women that support this law, but feminists don't. So I wouldn't say that feminists support this law, but and was there the second question you asked me? Hello.
Sorry, second
So
question?
Hey, I can
yeah,
still hear you.
yeah. So like, what was the second question you want to ask me? The first one like was the rape on pretext of marriage, and what the second topic you want to discuss with me?
The second topic, let's call it false accusations in general in India. Well, have you talked about that yet?
Yes, I did. I think like there are like countless laws protecting women, and like men do not even have a law protecting them from stalking. Like all these laws protect only women. Domestic violence, let it be domestic violence, let it be dowry harassment, let it be any kind of abuse or stuff like that. That it only protects women, not men. So many times, even in court proceeding, the women make all of this accusation and kind of like prolong the cases and take maintenance until since the court is proceeding and man has to pay the like money to women without even it being proven true. So when the case is like takes a lot of years, practically years, to be honest, even in a good scenario, it would probably take a few years. In the worst scenario, it would probably take a few decades. But man will continue to suffer. Man will still get the sadistic pleasure of getting money and filing false accusation and harassing men, and still getting away with it. And even after when the all of this is proven false, man is proven to be innocent. He will still have to pay a heavy price since the court proceeding took so long. So false accusation are very common, especially the ones especially the ones that are not about rape. I think feminists talk about rape, false accusation, which are the most severe ones. But to be honest, they do not make up the majority of false accusations that are made against men. There are little different kinds of false accusations that a woman could make against men without getting any consequences, and even the woman would benefit from making a false accusation, even if she is proven false. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like a
there's some
legal
similar.
loophole. Yeah, it's kind of like a
Yeah,
legal loophole.
I see. Yeah, there's kind of some stuff like that in England as well, where there was recently, well, a while ago, there was this woman who launched like 20 or 30, I think it was like 20 separate false rape allegations, puts one guy in prison for 4 years, puts some other guys in prison, ruins some other people's lives, and she got a lot of money for it, and she gets to keep all the money, although she's going to jail, I think, for probably not even more than a year. So it's very hard to remember if she how long she's going away for, but it wasn't long. But what I wanted to say was there's this law preventing the police from keeping track of when a woman makes a false accusation. So they won't be able to say, hold on, this woman has made 20 false accusations. And, how can it possibly be that she's been raped by 20 separate guys? It just, considering how safe UK is, it doesn't make sense. But Zada, maybe you could talk to us about some other issues in India that perhaps we won't have heard of here in the West.
So, like I said before, like coach being unfair is a big thing here, and like the probably one of the biggest point of like MRAs in India have, and I would say the laws really need to be gender neutral. Like laws are crazy here, man. They're like laws like they protect women against like anything. Like they are ready to arrest a man just for like uh looking for a girl's number, but they cannot arrest a woman for basically threatening a man. And like there are like lots of acid cases where uh, a man throws an acid on a woman when she rejected him, and also there are the cases when a woman throw acid on man when man rejected her. So in those cases, like the punishment for man is very severe as compared to the woman. It's non-existent, or even if a woman get punishment, she basically get punishment that is incomparable to her male counterpart. And also there are like NGOs and all that like help women but wouldn't help men in such a scenario. And also it's kind of like an made that the men are the evil ones that only that will throw acid on women. But it also happens to a man by a woman in 40% of the cases. I did not know the exact statistics, but it also happened to men with almost like 40 to 37% of the time. um and I think even if it happens more on men, I don't think it was reported that much. And uh, on top of all that, I would say education system being biased is a thing. And also I would like to add that there are like a government is giving out free laptops, free bicycles, free books to girls like who to promote female education, on more female into going into education, and like promote women empowerment and something like that. But they aren't really doing anything for like boys, like they do not have the money to get a proper education. Like they are ready to give out like free laptops to women who can afford education, who can afford a basic necessity and comfort, but they aren't ready to give support male children who are like suffering because of child labor, and also malnutrition or family abuse or stuff like that, which is really gross to be honest. Really gross to be honest. Like you are gonna giving out free laptops to someone that doesn't need it, uh, and can afford education, but you aren't really gonna help a poor child just because he's a boy.
Yes, it's very interesting how the law in India is just so slanted. We were talking about earlier about how uh, the uh, the government wanted to make the rape law gender neutral, but feminists stepped in and made it so that only men can commit rape, which is pretty much how it happens in a lot of countries.
Does anyone like to ask anything else before I leave?
All right, so let's just have a couple, 1, 2 more questions, Ada.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, a couple more questions from the floor if anyone wants to ask one, and then I think we'll wrap up the stream because it's getting close to our usual stop time anyway.
Uh, so I'm seeing in a group chat that there's a message about sexual abuse of men and boys in India. So I was watching this video on YouTube, and the first time I heard about MRA was of a video on International Men's Day, where a particular men's day organization was like having a parade or something like that. So there was this guy that said something that changed my views on a lot of things. So what he said was there was like this boy, 16 or 17 years old to be honest. So like he was like kidnapped by three women and was like gang raped for uh, like uh, 3 days on a few days, and when the police got him, like the woman, three women only got few months time, and the boy even was from a very privileged background. Even he had political connections. His parents had political connections, so like he was from a pretty good background. So even with that, he still could get justice, to be honest. And no newspaper, no televisions, no media house covered this incident. So that made me wonder. So many, how many of this incident would have taken place, and no one knows about it because since the guy was since the guy at least made a case against the boy, at least made a case against the woman, even though they only got few months, but there would be many cases where guy couldn't even make complaint, even if he go to police, and even if he go to his parents, no one's gonna believe him, and no one's gonna do anything about it. So it will just make his life a living hell, since no one's gonna trust him. There's no support. There's no support or no help, legal help, or help from anyone. Even if it goes to their parents, he might be the one that would be blamed. He might be the one that would go to jail. So that basically makes it way worse.
Are there any more questions for Zeta before we end the stream?
Hello, am I audible?
Barely heard you there. You've got a lot of noise.
Yes,
Anyone else?
you are Abital Spark.
Okay, I want to add one thing. Uh, means I have seen the means most of the cases. If girls means they do means some in most of the cases means where there is means in the West you are not living in relationship is this concept. In India it is not that much such cases, but there are when the guys don't want to live with girls. Some of these girls literally cut the man's private part, and still they got bail. But even if man scratches the girl, he would be serving a lifetime of the jail. And I have seen this in many cases. Literally, means just girls cut the part of the boys, and still no action is taken. They literally can just get bail because just they are women.
Yeah, I've seen like the girls like cutting a penises off, just because like guy cheated on her or is like breaking up with her, and like she practically gets no punishment at all.
Yes, even the, even there was petition for because petition for that for that if this happens to boys, at least they should get compensation. But even families opposes that. I just get this from on one Instagram articles. with this news. Their feminists opposes this also. Compensation for men, even as such time
I
as
mean, that's like,
yes, they oppose it.
I mean,
They
like,
oppose it.
I mean,
Means
it's
they
like really crazy that, I mean, like, it's really crazy that you can consider or jail a man for domestic violence, for a very little thing, can be considered domestic violence, like not buying a woman an expensive purse, but you aren't like able to recognize someone cutting a man's penis off as domestic violence. Like, what are you even thinking, or how can you even justify
and
your actions, or how
justify
you justify
even
it at all?
okay. I just want to add one more thing. You know that we have in Hindu we have tradition of gifting. Is that we give each other to a girl's house, means to their relatives, and means we have lot of gifts in our marriage. You know, even the registration system consider them also as a dowry. Means entirely the Hindu tradition is means the marriage in
Uh,
Hindu tradition. They literally
I
they can any
I
girl
have
can.
to cut you off here. I have to cut you off here, but like there are like legit cases where woman's husband's family or a man's family demands like expensive gift or money from woman after marrying her, which is really
No,
wrong.
okay.
But I think it's kind of like absurd. Like it's kind of like absurd that like according to Indian code, lipstick and even like a cloth that she wore on the wedding night could be considered dowry.
That's dowry. Yes, that's my
Yeah,
problem.
like anything can be considered dowry. Yeah, like anything. Like not they haven't even like set up a limit or something like that, or like you should decide that beforehand. Like if you like are okay with like giving some gift or like that, because I've seen like many times like the f- the woman's side of the family really pressure a man's family into taking something, and if a thing go down, like they could just file cases, and even if he hasn't taken really anything, he could still file cases.
And I want to add one more point. You are
I mean,
saying
like,
that just want to add one more thing. That you said that sometimes boys do take dowry, but I want to say means particular about my community. Here, what's happened is if boy does not demand something from a girl, then he considered as a low value, literally. So he just like pressure on the man because at my brother's marriage, means he just demanded about the gold ring just for the sake of means just let's do it. Means some this case also
like a
happens in certain.
symbolic thing. Like symbol thing, but like all of this stuff is like really debatable. But we could all agree that the dowry law is broken. I mean, like
Yes,
the other stuff, like it's kind of like debatable, but we could all agree that the law is broken.
it's already broken.
I
And
mean,
even
broken
today,
in the sense like it doesn't work, and it's unfair, and it's not justified.
yeah, you can say that. And even there are also other communities where boys give dowry to a woman, reverse dowry, literally.
Yes, yes. Those communities do exist, but still, like
Yes,
the dowry law isn't gender neutral.
I do argue on that. It's
So, anything else before I leave? So, so anything else? Like, does anyone else want to ask something to me before I leave?
Yeah, let's call it one more question.
What?
Let's call it one more question. Spark, did you have something to say, or somebody else?
what?
I've got a question,
Go on.
and this is for either of you. In your own community around where you live, um, and with the people that you're close to or associate with, among the men and boys, especially young men, um, are there any others that feel as strongly about this as you do? There's a reason for my question.
Yes, yes. Like a few, I have talked MRA about MRA with a few of them. Like they were
Okay.
like really excited. Like they were like really like yes, something for us, and like something for us. Like because everything like ended up for being with women. So like they aren't really involved in MRA stuff as much as I am. But like when I said like about MRA stuff on men's side stuff, they could totally relate with it since like they see do have problem, they do want to be heard, and they do see injustice happening to men all around.
Okay. The reason for my question is that if they if they really do feel that strongly about it, then I believe it would be good to organize and protect each other and to specifically and very openly disengage and not participate in all of these things that all of you were talking about that have caused so much trouble, and just say, we are not going to participate in that anymore. Would they be willing to do that with you?
So I don't know, man. Like I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
they would be doing that, because
Just
like
want
none of my friends are like seriously into the activism stuff, and
Yeah.
I would actually gather like the
Okay.
like same-minded people with them. I was
Then
actually
I
considering like
then I will
I was
tell
actually
you I will tell you then that you can expect things to continue getting worse.
actually, what we were
um
saying actually depends on the where you live. Because in India, there are three tier one city, tier two city, tier three city. Tier two and three, nothing gonna change. Their mentality gonna remain same. But in tier one, we do see some MRS. It depends on where do you live. Because still in my when I go to at my farmhouse, there at I know means at I just remember about the when my brother was getting married. I just asked means my few of the female cousins about the divorce laws, and they doesn't responded that. But at my back, they just God knows what they said to my mother. My mother literally scolded me.
dude, dude,
Literally means
like don't pull up stuff like that, don't pull up stuff like that. Are you gonna get your ass beaten up by some of course you're gonna get scolded by your mother. You're just going to a wedding and you're just gonna talk
yeah means
about like a divorce
literally
and
means
divorce law and stuff. Like that's bad woman. Like that's bad woman. Like man, that's really gonna get you like scolded. Of course that's gonna call it. Don't pull up like dangerous stuff like that. Stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, if
My
you are
advice.
if as a group you men are not willing to protect and defend each other, even from your own mothers, again, you just count on everything continuing to get worse. They will cut you out one at a time, and each one of you will suffer at least some of what you've been talking about.
actually
It's a
no.
It's
little
inevitable.
difficult. Yeah.
If you are
Listen,
unwilling to
That's
protect each other, it is
that
inevitable. There is no
uh,
escape.
But it's
This
a
will
little
happen.
difficult to
dude,
little
I
difficult to
understand what you're
ask
saying,
a
like
but
child or
listen,
I
Hey,
mean
guys,
what
listen,
about
it's
dude.
one at a time, please.
um, um I mean what about this? I would like to say like see things getting better here, at least here, because I see MRA movement growing, and I'm also like willing to like continue with MRA work in the future, and I'm also like considering doing a lot of stuff, MRA stuff in the future. So I'm gonna do it. Like we cannot expect everyone to do it. Say like activism work is like not everyone's cup of tea, and activism work is not everyone's cup of tea, and we cannot like expect everyone to do it. Not even the most guys, but I certainly can find a lot of people with the same value as me, and the one that are willing to put the work or are willing to do MRA work.
As I
It
said,
would be
to
good
at
we get
least
both
be willing
sides.
to stand up for each other and speak for each other. If you can't
Yeah,
do that,
You
you know,
listen. we do stand for each other, but just listen. But we don't have that position. We means like the here in India, the means your maturity just mostly depend on your age. We are just young kids. No one listens to us. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, what you need to do is try and focus on creating an institution where you can protect each other, like homeless boys or homeless guys institution or something. That you would be able, if
And
you would be able to set up
Personally,
something where men would be safe from the scorn of women or their mothers or any feminists, then I
and even
think it will be a
personally,
lot easier to move away
guys,
from that from the
uh, guys, I would say personally, I come from a privileged background. So basically, I didn't have to worry about these things, but I see a lot of it happening to to men in general. So I would continue with MI work hopefully in the future, and I would like to do stuff, more MI stuff in the real life MI stuff in the future. So like I would be continuing with that. What about this? And I like do see MRA movement growing. So like it's our responsibility to take it in that direction.
I wish you luck with trying to get people on board with it. If you want to talk to me later in the DMs about some leaflets, especially for India, that maybe you could hang up, then perhaps that would help. Okay, Doc, if you are we? Well, actually, we were all ready to quit, or is Zeta willing to take some more questions?
No, I'm just gonna leave now. Bye, guys.
Okay,
Bye,
thank you,
Zeta.
Zeta. Dark, if you could take us out, I will shut off the stream as soon as you're done. Thank you.
Sure. I just would like to make a quick rule reminder. Look, guys, this is, of course, basically a free speech server. You're allowed to your opinion, your beliefs, as long as you stay within the rules. We do not insult each other. That is the number one rule in here, no insulting. And there are very high consequences for it. I know some people here didn't do it, but some other people did. So please, can we refrain from doing so in the future? Personal issues, keep in the DMs. Direct messages. Otherwise, thank you everyone for coming today. This has been the Men's Human Rights stream. We are here every Friday, 5 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. Central time. If you have a topic recommendation, you can always message Men Are Human, Blue Orange, or myself. We are doing our International Men's Day posters. You can go menarehuman.com and get the leaflets for that. We're still making new ones. Today has been a great talk, and so goodbye, everyone.